Commander Minho stood alone on the bridge of the eternal dawn, staring at the empty darkness ahead. 3 years had passed since Earth died. 3 long years of searching through the cold vacuum of space, hoping to find other humans who had escaped the nightmare. The ship hummed quietly around him. 47 souls remained aboard this vessel. 47 people who carried the entire weight of humanity on their shoulders. Sometimes Minho wondered if that weight would crush them all before they found what they were looking for. Dr. Sujin walked onto the bridge, her footsteps soft against the metal floor. She carried a data pad in her hands, but her face told Minho everything he needed to know before she spoke a single word. Another dead colony, she said quietly. The Kepler 186 settlement. We picked up their final transmission 2 hours ago. Minho closed his eyes. The Kepler 186 colony had been home to 12,000 people, families, children, scientists and farmers and teachers and artists. All gone now, just like the others. How many does that make? Minho asked, though he already knew the answer. 17. Colonies confirmed destroyed, Sujin replied. 8 more have gone silent in the past month. The Devourers had been thorough in their work. The alien hive mind consumed everything in its path. Planets, moons, space stations, even asteroids. They left nothing behind but empty rock and the screams of the dying echoing through space. Taehyun, their young navigator, looked up from his station. His hands moved across the control panels with practiced ease, but Minho could see the exhaustion in his eyes. They were all tired. Tired of running. Tired of finding only death wherever they went. Tired of being the last hope for a species that might already be extinct. Commander, Taehyun said, I have the next set of coordinates ready. There are 3 more colonies in the outer systems that might still be alive. Might still be alive. Those words had become their prayer and their curse. Every jump through hyperspace brought hope and fear in equal measure. Hope that they would find survivors. Fear that they would find only silence. Minho walked to the large window that showed the stars ahead. Each point of light had once held promise. Each solar system had been a potential new home for humanity. Now they were graveyards, monuments, to a species that had reached for the stars only to have them torn away. Sir, came a voice from behind him. It was J1, the communications officer. We are getting something strange from the Kepler 442 system. Minho turned around. J1 was young, barely 25, but he had good instincts. If he said something was strange, it was worth investigating. What kind of strange? Minho asked. It is not human technology, J1 said, his fingers dancing over his controls. But it is definitely artificial. And sir, I think it might be calling for help. The bridge fell silent. In 3 years of searching, they had found human colonies, devourer fleets, and empty space. They had never found signs of other intelligent life. The galaxy had seemed empty except for humanity and the creatures that hunted them. Sujin moved to Jaewon's station and looked at his readings. Her eyes widened as she studied the data. This is incredible, she whispered. The energy signature is unlike anything in our databases. The frequency patterns are complex, almost like language. Could it be a trap? Taehyun asked. The Devourers might have learned to mimic other signals. Minho considered this. The Devourers were cunning, but they had never shown this level of sophistication. Their communications were simple, direct, focused only on finding and consuming their next target. How far is Kepler 442? Minho asked. 6 days at maximum hyperspace velocity. Taehyun replied. 6 days. 6 days to reach what might be the first sign of non-human intelligence they had ever encountered. 6 days to discover if humanity was truly alone in its fight against extinction. Set course for Kepler 442, Minho ordered. Maximum speed. The ship turned smoothly, its engines powering up for the long journey ahead. Minho felt a strange mixture of hope and fear building in his chest. Hope because they might not be alone after all. Fear because whatever was out there might be just another predator waiting to finish what the Devourers had started. Over the following days, the crew worked tirelessly to analyze the mysterious signal. Sujin spent hours in the science labs, running every test she could think of. The signal remained consistent, broadcasting from somewhere in the Kepler 442 system with mechanical precision. It repeats every 47 minutes, she reported to Minho on the fourth day. The pattern is complex but structured. Mathematical sequences, harmonic frequencies, even what looks like star charts. Star charts? Minho asked. Old ones, Sujin said. The stellar positions match what this part of the galaxy looked like thousands of years ago. Thousands of years. Minho tried to imagine a civilization that had existed for that long. Humanity had barely managed to spread across a few dozen worlds before the Devourers found them. What kind of beings could survive for millennia? There is something else, Sujin continued. The signal is getting weaker. Whatever is broadcasting it, I think it is dying. On the sixth day, they arrived at Kepler 442. The system was ancient, its star a dim red dwarf surrounded by a handful of cold planets. The signal was coming from the fourth moon of a gas giant at the edge of the system. Take us in slowly, Minho ordered as they approached the moon. Full sensors, shields up. The moon was a barren world of ice and rock, its surface scarred by countless meteor impacts. But as they got closer, their sensors detected something extraordinary. Buried beneath kilometers of ice was a structure of immense size, its geometry unlike anything humans had ever built. Commander, Taehyun said, his voice filled with wonder. You need to see this. On the main screen, enhanced images showed a crystalline formation buried in the moon's crust. It was beautiful and alien, its surfaces catching and reflecting light in patterns that seemed almost alive. How big is it? Minho asked. At least 2 kilometers across, Sujin replied. Maybe larger. The ice is interfering with our deep scans. And the signal? Coming from directly inside, Jaewon confirmed. Whatever is calling for help, it is in there. Minho stared at the image on the screen. Somewhere inside that ancient structure, something was waiting. Something that had been calling across the void for who knew how long, hoping that someone would hear and come to help. Prepare a landing party, Minho said. We are going down there. As the crew prepared for their descent to the moon's surface, Minho could not shake the feeling that they were about to discover something that would change everything. For better or worse, humanity was no longer alone in the galaxy. The question was whether that would be their salvation or their doom. The landing shuttle cut through the thin atmosphere of the frozen moon like a silver needle. Commander Minho sat in the pilot seat, his hands steady on the controls despite the nervous energy coursing through his body. Behind him, Dr. Sujin checked her equipment for the third time while Taehyun monitored the landing approach. Surface temperature is minus 120 degrees, Taehyun reported. The environmental suits will keep us safe, but we should not stay outside longer than necessary. Minho nodded and guided the shuttle toward a flat area near the buried structure. Through the viewports, the moon's surface looked like a graveyard of ice and stone. Ancient craters dotted the landscape, filled with frozen gases that sparkled. In the dim light of the distant star, the shuttle touched down with a soft thud, its landing legs sinking slightly into the loose ice. Minho powered down the engines and turned to face his team. Remember, we do not know what we are dealing with, he said. Stay close, stay alert, and if anything feels wrong, we leave immediately. The 3 humans sealed their helmets and stepped out onto the moon's surface. Their boots crunched through the ice as they walked toward the coordinates where their sensors had detected an entrance to the buried structure. There, Sujin pointed toward a dark opening in the ice wall ahead. That looks artificial. The entrance was perfectly circular, about 3 meters wide. Strange symbols were carved around its edges, symbols that did not match any known language in human databases. The carvings glowed faintly with their own light, pulsing in a slow, steady rhythm, like a sleeping heartbeat. The signal is definitely coming from inside, Taehyun confirmed, checking his portable scanner. It is much stronger now. They activated their helmet lights and stepped into the tunnel. The walls were smooth and curved, made from some kind of crystalline material that reflected their lights in rainbow patterns. The tunnel sloped downward, leading them deeper into the moon's interior. After walking for 20 minutes, they emerged into a vast chamber that took their breath away. The Space was enormous, easily 100 meters high and twice as wide. The walls were covered in the same crystalline material as the tunnel, but here it formed complex geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. But it was what occupied the center of the chamber that made them all stop and stare in amazement. A creature unlike anything they had ever seen or imagined stood motionless in the middle of the room. It was enormous, nearly 12 meters tall, with a body that seemed to be made of living crystal. Its form was roughly humanoid but clearly alien, with 6 limbs that ended in delicate finger-like appendages. Its head was elongated and graceful, crowned with what looked like natural crystal formations that glowed with soft, shifting colors. "My God," Sujin whispered. "It is beautiful." The creature was held in place by beams of energy that formed a cage around its body. The beams connected to devices mounted on the chamber walls, devices that hummed with power and purpose. The creature's eyes, large and compound like those of an insect but somehow deeply intelligent, tracked their movement as they approached. "It is alive," Taehyun said, his voice filled with wonder. "And it knows we are here." Minho stepped closer, studying the energy cage that held the creature prisoner. The technology was far beyond anything humans had developed, but its purpose was clear. This being had been trapped here for a very long time. "Sujin, can you analyze those restraint systems?" Minho asked. Dr. Sujin approached one of the wall-mounted devices with her scanner active. "The energy patterns are incredibly complex," she said after several minutes, "but I think I understand the basic principle. These beams are not just holding it in place, they are draining its life force." "You mean it is being tortured?" Taehyun asked. "Worse than that," Sujin replied. "It is being slowly killed. The system is designed to keep the creature alive while gradually weakening it over time. This has been going on for centuries, maybe thousands of years." The creature made a sound then, a low harmonic vibration that seemed to come from deep within its crystalline body. The sound was hauntingly beautiful, but filled with such sadness that it made all 3 humans feel tears forming in their eyes. "It is trying to communicate," Sujin said, adjusting her scanner to record the sounds. "The frequency patterns are incredibly sophisticated. This is definitely language." The creature's crystal formations began to glow brighter, pulsing in rhythm with its vocalizations. Colors flowed across its body like aurora lights, creating patterns that seemed to carry meaning even though the humans could not understand them. "Look, at this," Taehyun said, pointing to symbols on the chamber walls. "These markings are everywhere. They must be some kind of writing system." Sujin began taking detailed scans of the symbols while Minho continued to study the restraint system. The more he looked at it, the angrier he became. Whatever species had built this prison had done so with deliberate cruelty. The system was designed not just to hold the creature but to make it suffer. "Commander," Sujin called out, "I found something important. These symbols, they are not just writing. They are a record." "A record of what?" 17 different locations in this galaxy. Each one shows a similar structure, a similar prison, and each one shows a single prisoner inside. Minho felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold moon. 17 prisons, 17 creatures, all held by the same species, Sujin confirmed. The builders of these prisons, they call themselves the Collectors. And based on these records, they have been doing this for a very long time. The creature made another sound, this one more urgent. Its eyes focused on Minho with unmistakable intelligence and what looked like hope. "It knows we can understand some of this," Minho said. "It is asking for help." Taehyun looked nervous. "Sir, we do not know what this creature is capable of. If we free it, it might be dangerous." "Dangerous?" Minho turned to face his navigator. "Look at it, Taehyun. Really look at it. This being has been trapped and tortured for longer than human. Civilization has existed. It has every reason to hate us, to hate everything, but look at its eyes. What do you see?" Taehyun studied the creature's face carefully. "I see pain," he said quietly, "and sadness, but not anger, not hatred." "Exactly," Minho said. "Any species that could survive this kind of treatment without becoming consumed by rage, That is not a species we should fear. Sujin had been working on her analysis of the restraint system. I think I can disable it, she announced. The energy flows follow a pattern I can interrupt, but once I start the process, there will be no stopping it. Minho looked up at the towering creature one more time. Its crystal formations pulsed with gentle light, and its compound eyes seemed to hold depths of wisdom and sorrow that reminded him of Earth's oldest oceans. Do it, he said. Sujin connected her portable computer to one of the wall devices and began entering commands. The chamber filled with new sounds as the ancient systems began to shut down. The energy beams flickered and started to fade. The creature watched as its prison dissolved around it. For the first time in millennia, it was free. What happened next would haunt Minho's dreams forever. The enormous being took one tentative step forward, then another. Then it collapsed to its knees and began to weep. The sounds that came from the creature were unlike anything the humans had ever heard. They were deep and musical, harmonic vibrations that resonated through the crystal chamber and seemed to make the very air itself mourn. The creature's body shook with sobs that spoke of loss beyond measure, of loneliness that had stretched across geological ages. Minho found tears streaming down his own face as he listened to the creature's cries. He did not need to understand its language to know what it was feeling. The sound of absolute grief was universal. In that moment, looking at this broken, ancient being weeping for its freedom, Minho realized they had found something more important than another intelligent species. They had found a kindred spirit. The enormous creature continued to weep for nearly an hour. Commander Minho and his team stood quietly nearby, not knowing what to do or say. The sounds of grief that filled the crystal chamber were so deep and pure that they seemed to reach into the human souls and touch something fundamental about loss and loneliness. Finally, the creature's sobs began to quiet. It slowly raised its great head and looked at the three humans with eyes that sparkled like starlight. When it spoke, its voice was like music played on instruments made of crystal and wind. Thank you, it said in perfect human language. Dr. Sujin gasped in surprise. You can speak our language? The creature's crystal formations pulsed with gentle light. I learned it from listening to your ship's communications as you approached. My people have always been quick to understand the patterns of speech and thought. Your people? Minho asked carefully. The creature was quiet for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice carried the weight of infinite sadness. I am Dawn, last of the resonance. My people have been gone for 3,000 of your years. Tai-hyun stepped forward. Gone? What happened to them? Dawn's body shimmered as colors flowed across its crystalline surface. The colors seemed to tell a story all by themselves, shifting from bright golds and blues to deep purples and blacks. The collectors came to our worlds when our civilization was young and peaceful, Dawn explained. We were builders of harmony, creators of songs that could shape matter and energy. We thought all intelligent life would share our love of beauty and understanding. The creature moved slowly around the chamber, its 6 limbs carrying it with surprising grace despite its enormous size. As it walked, the crystal walls began to resonate with soft harmonics that made the air itself seem to sing. We were wrong, Dawn continued. The collectors saw only what we could do for them. They captured my people one by one, using us as living tools to build their ships and weapons. We could not fight back because violence was foreign to our nature. Sujin was recording everything with her scanner, but her face showed the pain she felt hearing Dawn's story. How did you end up here? I was the last, Dawn said simply. When all my people were dead, the collectors no longer needed me for their work, but they could not bring themselves to simply kill me. Instead, they built this prison to keep me alive and suffering, a trophy of their conquest. Minho felt anger building in his chest, the same anger he had felt when Earth burned, when the Devourers consumed everything humanity had built. The collectors, are they still out there? Dawn's eyes focused on Minho with sudden intensity. Yes, they move through the galaxy like a plague, taking what they want and destroying what they cannot use. Your species has encountered them, have you not? We call them the Devourers, Taehyun said. They destroyed our homeworld 3 years ago. Then you understand, Dawn said. The creature's voice became softer, filled with compassion. You carry the same pain I have carried for so long, the pain of being the last. For several minutes, none of them spoke. The only sound in the chamber was the gentle humming of the crystal walls responding to Dawn's presence. How many of us are left? Minho finally asked. Of your people? I do not know, but I can sense their presence across the galaxy. Your species burns bright in the cosmic song. There are others still alive, though not many. Hope flared in Minho's heart. You can sense other humans? All intelligent life creates vibrations in what you might call the fabric of space and time, Dawn explained. My people learned to feel these vibrations long ago. I can teach you to hear them too, if you wish. Sujin looked up from her recordings. Dawn, the prison systems we found here. Your people built something that could analyze the collector's technology, did they not? Dawn's crystal formations brightened. Yes. Before I was captured, I helped design systems that could track and predict collector movements. The data is still here, stored in the crystals around us. Could that data help us find other human survivors? Minho asked. More than that, Dawn replied. It could help us find the collectors themselves. Taehyun activated his scanner and began analyzing the crystal formations on the walls. Commander, these crystals are storing massive amounts of information. Star charts, energy signatures, movement patterns. This is like having a complete military intelligence database. As Taehyun worked, Dawn moved closer to Minho. The creature's presence was oddly comforting, like standing near a warm fire on a cold night. You freed me from my prison, Dawn said quietly. Why? You could have left me here and taken the information you needed. Minho thought about the question for a moment. Because leaving you here would have made us no better than the ones who put you here. And because, he paused, searching for the right words, no one should have to face extinction alone. Dawn made a sound that might have been laughter, if laughter could be made of crystal chimes and starlight. Your species is young, but you understand something that much older civilizations have forgotten. Compassion is not weakness. It is the greatest strength any people can possess. Sir, Taehyun called out excitedly, you need to see this. Minho and Sujin joined Taehyun at one of the crystal walls. The surface was displaying what looked like a three-dimensional map of local space, with points of light marking various locations. These are active collector operations, Taehyun explained. And look at this cluster of signals. He pointed to an area of the map that showed several bright points grouped together. The Vega sector. That is where the Hansen colony and the New Sol settlement were supposed to be. Supposed to be? Sujin asked. We thought the Devourers had destroyed them months ago, Minho said. But if this data is accurate, they are still alive, Dawn finished. The collectors are keeping them alive for a reason. Your people are being held prisoner just as I was. The implications hit all three humans at once. Thousands of human beings were trapped in collector facilities, being used for unknown purposes. People they had given up for dead were still alive, still waiting for rescue. How long do we have? Minho asked. Dawn studied the crystal display for several moments. Not long. The collectors are preparing to move their operations. Within days, they will transport their prisoners to processing facilities deeper in their territory. Once that happens, your people will be beyond any hope of rescue. Minho felt the familiar weight of command settling on his shoulders. 47 people aboard the Eternal Dawn against an entire collector fleet. The odds were impossible. We have to try, he said. With one ship? Sujin asked. Minho, we would not stand a chance. Not with one ship, Dawn said quietly. But perhaps with two. The humans turned to stare at the enormous creature. This facility still has power, Dawn explained. The collectors built it to be self-sustaining. With some modifications, it could be turned into a ship. Not fast, not maneuverable, but very large and very strong. You would come with us? Minho asked. Dawn's crystal formations pulsed with colors that somehow conveyed determination and hope. I have been alone for 3,000 years. I have dreamed of the day I could strike back at those who destroyed my people. Your cause is just, and your courage reminds me of what my own people once were. But even with 2 ships, Taehyun said, we are still talking about going up against an entire fleet. Dawn moved to another section of the crystal wall and touched it gently. New images appeared, showing star maps and energy readings from across the galaxy. There is something else, Dawn said, something the collectors do not know about. My people left more than just information in these crystals. We left a gift. What kind of gift? Sujin asked. The ability to sing across the stars, Dawn replied. To send our voices to every corner of the galaxy at once. To touch the minds and hearts of every intelligent being who has the capacity to listen. Minho began to understand what Dawn was suggesting. You want to call for help? More than that, Dawn said. I want to tell the galaxy the truth about what the collectors have done. Not just to my people or to yours, but to countless others across time and space. I want to sing the song of all the victims, all the lost ones, all those who died alone and forgotten. And you think others will listen? Minho asked. I think, Dawn said, its voice filled with quiet conviction, that there are more good people in this galaxy than bad ones. They just need someone to show them the way. As they prepared to leave the crystal chamber and return to their ships, Minho felt something he had not experienced since Earth's destruction. He felt hope. The journey to the Vega sector took 4 days. Commander Minho stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, watching the strange sight that followed behind them through space. Dawn had somehow transformed the ancient crystal facility into a ship, though calling it a ship was like calling a mountain a pebble. The crystal vessel was enormous, easily 10 times the size of the Eternal Dawn. Its surfaces caught and reflected starlight in patterns that seemed almost alive. Dawn moved through, its crystalline corridors alone, preparing systems that had slept for thousands of years. I still cannot believe what I'm seeing, Dr. Sujin said as she joined Minho at the observation window. The power required to move something that size through hyperspace should be impossible. Dawn's people understood energy in ways we never imagined, Minho replied. They built their entire civilization around harmony and resonance. Even their ships were works of art. Taehyun looked up from his navigation station. We will reach the Vega sector in 18 hours. The collector fleets are still in position around the 3 colony worlds. Minho felt his stomach tighten. 18 hours until they would face an enemy that had already destroyed Earth and captured thousands of human survivors. 2 ships against an entire armada. The odds were beyond impossible. Any word from the colonies? He asked. Radio silence, Taehyun replied sadly. But our sensors are picking up life signs on all 3 worlds. The people are still alive, probably hiding in underground shelters. Over the ship's communication system, Dawn's voice resonated with its musical tones. Commander Minho, may I speak with you privately? Minho made his way to the shuttle bay where they had set up a communication link with Dawn's crystal ship. The enormous creature appeared on the holographic display, its body glowing with soft blues and purples. You are afraid? Dawn said gently. I can feel your emotions from here. Of course I'm afraid, Minho admitted. I'm about to lead my people into a battle we cannot win. These 47 souls are all that might remain of humanity, and I am probably going to get them all killed. Fear is not weakness, Dawn replied. Fear shows that you understand the cost of what we are about to do. But tell me, what would happen if we turned around right now? Minho was quiet for a moment. The collector fleets would transport their prisoners to processing facilities. Thousands of humans would disappear forever. Eventually, the collectors would hunt down our ship, too. So our choice is not between safety and danger, Dawn said. Our choice is between dying while fighting for something important or dying after we have given up hope. When you put it that way, Minho said with a weak smile, it sounds almost reasonable. There is something else, Dawn continued. Something I have not told you about my people's final gift, the ability to sing across the galaxy. Yes, But it requires more than just my voice, Dawn explained. The song of the resonance draws its power from genuine emotion. The deeper the feeling, the farther the song can travel. My grief alone has sustained me for 3,000 years, but it is not enough to reach every corner of the galaxy. Minho began to understand. You need my grief too. The grief of the last humans. Not just yours, Dawn said. Everyone aboard. Your ship carries the pain of Earth's destruction. Everyone has lost family, friends, entire worlds. If you allow me to share that pain, to add it to my own, together we can create something powerful enough to be heard on every inhabited world in the galaxy. And then what? We sing sad songs while the collectors destroy us? Dawn's crystal formations pulsed brighter. Then the galaxy learns the truth. Every intelligent species discovers what the collectors really are. Some will choose to ignore the message, but others will act. Change does not happen all at once, Commander. It starts with a single voice that refuses to be silenced. The next morning, Minho called a meeting of his entire crew. 47 people gathered in the ship's main assembly hall, their faces showing the stress and fear they all felt about the coming battle. I will not lie to you, Minho began. What we are about to attempt will probably get us all killed. We are going up against forces that have already destroyed our home world and captured thousands of our people. The smart thing to do would be to run away and try to survive somewhere else. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some faces showed fear, others determination, but all showed the exhaustion of people who had been running and hiding for too long. But, Minho continued, if we run now, we condemn everyone being held prisoner by the collectors to a fate worse than death. We also guarantee that someday, somewhere, the collectors will find us too. So I am asking you to choose. A young engineer named Hyunwoo raised his hand. What exactly are you asking us to choose, sir? I am asking you to help our new ally Dawn send a message to every intelligent species in the galaxy. A message that will tell them the truth about the collectors and ask for their help. But sending that message requires us to share our deepest pain, our grief for everything we have lost. An older woman named Minji stood up. You mean we have to relive losing Earth? Losing our families? Yes, Minho said simply. And we have to do it while flying into battle against impossible odds. The room was silent for several long minutes. Then Hyunwoo spoke again. My wife and daughter were on Earth when it fell, he said quietly. I dream about them every night. If sharing that pain could help save other families, other children, then I am willing. One by one, other crew members began to speak. They talked about lost homes, destroyed dreams, friends and family who would never see another sunrise. Each story added to the weight of grief in the room, but also to their sense of shared purpose. We do this together, Minho said finally. All of us. When they reached the Vega sector, the sight that greeted them was both horrifying and amazing. 3 human colony worlds hung in space like jewels, but they were surrounded by a fleet of collector ships unlike anything the humans had ever seen. The collector vessels were black and angular, shaped like enormous insects made of metal and hatred. They moved in perfect formation around the planets, their weapons trained on the surface settlements below. How many ships? Minho asked. 237, Taehyun replied, his voice barely above a whisper. And how many people on those worlds? Our estimates say between 15 and 20,000, Sujin answered. 20,000 human lives hanging in the balance. 20,000 people who were counting on rescue from a force of 47 souls in an outdated research vessel. Dawn, Minho said into his communicator. Are you ready? I am ready, came the musical reply. But Commander, once I begin the song, I will not be able to stop it. The collectors will know exactly where we are, and they will send everything they have to destroy us. How long do we need to hold them off? The song must build slowly to reach its full power, Dawn explained. I will need at least 30 minutes to touch every inhabited world in the galaxy. 30 minutes. Half an hour to survive against odds that would make angels weep. All hands battle stations, Minho announced over the ship's communication system. This is what we came here to do. As the Eternal Dawn moved toward the collector fleet, Minho opened a channel to every human colony ship, every refugee station, every hidden survivor enclave that might still exist in the galaxy. This is Commander Minho of the research vessel Eternal Dawn, he began, his voice carrying across the void to reach any human ears that might be listening. 3 years ago, our homeworld died. We have been running ever since, searching for survivors, hoping to find others who escaped the nightmare. The collector ships began to turn toward them, their weapons powering up with malevolent energy. Today we discovered that thousands of our people are still alive, held prisoner by the same aliens who destroyed Earth. They call themselves collectors, but we know them as devourers. They take what they want and destroy what they cannot use. The Boyer first collector ships broke formation and began moving toward the 2 human vessels, still too far away to fire but closing fast. We also discovered that we are not alone in our fight, Minho continued. There are others in this galaxy who have suffered as we have suffered, others who have lost everything to the collector's cruelty. Tears began to stream down Minho's face as he spoke. Behind him, his crew members wept openly as they remembered Earth's blue skies, summer rain, the laughter of children playing in parks that no longer existed. Today, we make our stand. Not just for humanity, but for every species that has ever faced extinction, for every world that has ever burned, for every family that has ever been torn apart by forces beyond their control. On the crystal ship, Dawn began to sing. Dawn's song began as a whisper that seemed to come from the very fabric of space itself. The crystal ship glowed with patterns of light that pulsed in rhythm with the ancient creature's voice. The sound was unlike anything the humans had ever heard, a harmony so pure and beautiful that it made their hearts ache with longing. Commander Minho watched through the bridge windows as the first wave of collector ships closed in on their position. Energy weapons charged with deadly light, preparing to turn the Eternal Dawn into scattered debris floating in the void. Shields up, all weapons ready, Minho ordered, though he knew their small research vessel could not hope to match the firepower. Arrayed against them, Taehyun gripped his controls tightly. Sir, they will be in firing range in 90 seconds. Hold course, Minho replied. We give Dawn every second we can. The song grew stronger, and with it came something unexpected. The grief and pain that every human aboard the Eternal Dawn had carried for 3 years began to flow out of them like water breaking through a dam. But instead of weakening them, sharing their sorrow seemed to give them strength. Dr. Sujin wiped tears from her eyes as she monitored the communication systems. Commander, Dawn's song is being amplified by our ship's transmitters. The signal is reaching beyond anything we thought possible. How far? The entire galaxy, she whispered in amazement. Every star system, every inhabited world. The song is traveling faster than light itself. On worlds scattered across the galaxy, billions of intelligent beings suddenly stopped what they were doing. In cities of glass and metal, in forests of living crystal in the depths of methane oceans, sapient creatures felt something they had never experienced before. They heard the pure grief of the last human and the ancient sorrow of the last resonant, and they understood what it meant to be truly alone in an uncaring universe. The collector fleet opened fire. Energy beams lanced through space toward the 2 ships, but something extraordinary happened. The beams seemed to bend and twist around Dawn's crystal vessel, deflected by harmonics that turned destructive force into harmless light. Impossible, Taehyun breathed. The song is creating some kind of protective field, but the Eternal Dawn was not protected by Dawn's abilities. The human ship shuddered as enemy fire struck its shields, systems overloading under the massive assault. Shields down to 60%, reported Hyun Woo from the engineering station. We cannot take much more of this. Minho opened the ship-wide communication channel again. His voice, mixed with Dawn's song, carried across the galaxy to reach ears, and minds beyond counting. We are the last children of Earth, he said, his words heavy with 3 years of accumulated grief. We carry the memories of blue skies and green forests, of oceans that sang with life and cities that touched the stars. All of that is gone now. taken by creatures who see beauty only as something to be consumed. More collector ships joined. The attack. The space around the two vessels filled with deadly energy as hundreds of weapons fired at once. The Eternal Dawn's shields flickered and began to fail. "Shields down to 20%, Hyunwoo called out. "We know we are going to die today," Minho continued, his voice carrying the weight of absolute truth. "But we choose to die fighting for something greater than ourselves. We choose to die so that others might live. We choose to die so that the galaxy might finally see the truth about the collectors and their endless hunger." On the crystal ship, Dawn's song reached a crescendo that made reality itself seem to vibrate. The creature's massive form blazed with light as it poured 3,000 years of loneliness and pain into its voice. But mixed with that ancient sorrow was something new. Hope. The song told the story of two species facing extinction, of the last survivors choosing to stand together rather than die alone. It spoke of courage in the face of impossible odds, of compassion that transcended the boundaries between different forms of life. And across the galaxy, the listeners began to respond. On the war moon of Keth Prime, the warrior clans of the Vorthan Empire heard the song and remembered their own ancient losses. Battle fleets that had remained neutral for centuries suddenly powered up their engines and set course for the Vega sector. In the crystal gardens of Harmonious, the peaceful gardener collective felt the pure grief of the song touch their photosynthetic souls. For the first time in their species' history, they voted to take military action against another sapient race. Even the machine intelligences of the core worlds, beings of pure logic who had never known emotion, found themselves moved by the mathematical perfection of Dawn's harmonies. Ancient battleships that had slept for millennia awakened and began their journey toward the source of the song. The collector fleet, sensing something was wrong, intensified their attack. The Eternal Dawn's hull began to buckle under the assault, sections of the ship venting atmosphere into space. "Hull breach on Deck 7, Sujin reported. "We are losing life support." "How much longer does Dawn need?" Minho asked. 5 more minutes, came the musical reply through their communicators. "The song is almost complete." 5 minutes, 300 seconds to hold off an entire armada with a dying ship and 47 people who refused to surrender, all remaining. "Power to weapons," Minho ordered. "If we are going down, we take as many of them with us as we can." The Eternal Dawn fired everything it had. Missiles and energy beams lanced out toward the collector ships, doing minimal damage but showing the galaxy that humanity would not go quietly into extinction. Then something miraculous happened. Space began to fill with new ships, vessels arriving through hyperspace from every corner of the galaxy. They came in ones and twos at first, then in squadrons, then in entire fleets. "Commander," Taehyun said, his voice filled with wonder, I'm reading over 3,000 ships jumping into the system." The collector fleet found itself suddenly surrounded by an armada unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Vorthan battle cruisers flew alongside Gardner bioships. Ancient machine intelligences emerged from hyperspace next to vessels from species that had hidden in the shadows for millennia. They had all heard the song. They had all felt the pure grief of two species facing extinction. And they had all decided that enough was enough. The battle that followed was brief and decisive. The collectors, for all their cruelty and technological advancement, had never faced a united galaxy before. Their ships were overwhelmed and destroyed, their survivors forced to flee to the furthest reaches of known space. But the rescue was not the end of the story. It was the beginning. 6 months later, Commander Minho stood on the observation deck of the New Harmony, a ship built with technology gifted by grateful species from across the galaxy. Through the windows, he could see Earth hanging in space like a blue and green jewel. The planet was healing, its ecosystems restored by the combined efforts of dozens of alien civilizations. Dr. Sujin worked in laboratories that existed in dimensions humans had never imagined, collaborating with scientists whose forms of life challenged every assumption about what was possible. Taehyun navigated through space-time using routes that had been opened by civilizations seeking to repay an impossible debt. And Dawn no longer sang alone. On worlds throughout the galaxy, monuments had been erected that resonated with the frequency of that first galaxy-spanning song. Children of 100 species learned the story of the last human and the last resonant, whose shared tears had become the foundation of a new galactic community. "Are you happy?" Dawn asked, its crystalline form reflecting the light of Earth's. Sun Minho placed his hand on his friend's surface, feeling the gentle vibrations of contentment. "I think so. We saved the people in the Vega sector. We found other human survivors scattered across the galaxy. We even got our home back." "But something troubles you," Dawn observed. "We are not the last anymore," Minho said. "Humanity has a future again. Your people's sacrifice was not forgotten. But sometimes I wonder if we deserved all this. If we were worthy of the help we received." Dawn's formations pulsed with colors that somehow conveyed gentle amusement. "Worthiness is not something you are born with, my friend. It is something you earn through your choices. You chose to free me from my prison when you could have simply taken what you needed. You chose to share your grief rather than bear it alone. You chose to fight for others rather than just for yourselves. And that was enough?" "More than enough," Dawn replied. "The galaxy heard your song, Commander Minho. Not just the words you spoke or the grief you shared, but the choice you made to stand together rather than fall apart. That is what moved so many hearts. That is what brought the fleets to save you." Through the windows, Earth turned slowly in space. Oceans sparkled in sunlight. Clouds drifted over continents where new cities were rising. Children played in parks. That had been ash just months before. "Do you think they will remember?" Minho asked. "The species that helped us? Will they remember why they came?" "They will remember," Dawn said with certainty. "The song changed them, just as it changed us." The galaxy learned something important that day. It learned that we are all connected, all part of something larger than ourselves. Grief shared becomes hope. Pain shared becomes strength. And voices raised together can change the very fabric of reality. Minho smiled as he watched his homeworld turn beneath them. Somewhere on that blue sphere, humans see